This is the Crazy Over 40s Live podcast, where every Thursday you will have a pirouette of rotating co-hosts, including myself, Caroline Brown, that will delve into topics relating to the over 40s. Throw away this notion that you're going through a midlife crisis. We're going for a crazy over 40s life. It's the time to uncover and rebirth our adolescent years filled with curiosity and all our desires. We do it right here on the Crazy Over 40s Live podcast. We look into relationships, emotional, sexual, financial wellness, entrepreneurships, providing you with an enjoyable delivery every Thursday. And don't forget to share and subscribe so you can keep updated on all the episodes as and when they become available. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello listeners, and welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Caroline Brown. And today we shall be delving into high value men. Yes, what is a high value man? How do you get to be high value? Can you stay high value? Well, here to tell us more, relationship coach for men, Stefanson, is here to tell us how we can get men to be high value, to stay high value, and stay on top of being high value. I shall be joined by Stefan after the interlude, and don't forget to share and subscribe so you can keep updated on all the episodes as and when they become available. Audience, we have Stefanson. Hello, hi.
Hi Caroline, thanks for having me on your show.
No, thanks for coming on, because I keep hearing high value man, how to become a high value man. And you are all about that. But I need to give you an introduction a little bit better than I have done. So please introduce yourself to my audience.
Yeah, so this has all come about from having struggled with relationship for the last 20 years and want to take more ownership of my own failures in my relationships in regards to understanding what it is to be a present and engaging partner. And that's where I came up with the high value man concept and kind of created a path for myself and a framework in regards to working on helping myself to be a better person and a better relationship. And then I kind of wanted to share that with other men, to kind of men that are looking to do the same and be better at the relationship like myself.
Right. So being a relationship coach, well, one, I would say you would need to have experiences of relationships. And you said that, by kind of going through the journey yourself, you kind of understand what it is to be in that situation, but also how you can overcome some of the hurdles that men seem to be in. And that's what's presenting them the difficulties of finding them the right relationship for them. Can you tell me, is there something in that men somehow don't know, perhaps, I'm going to go out on a limb, how to be in a relationship?
Yeah,
Are there good examples for them to go by?
So my kind of experience comes from, always, as I said, being struggling with 20 years of relationship. I've had 2 long-term relationships, one failed in a failed marriage. I'm a divorced dad, a daughter of 10. So I've had to draw an experience of a lot of things that I've kind of realized through my relationships. One, my first relationship, I was just too naive and wasn't really engaging enough. And the second one was that I fell into trying to please my partner too much, or all my life came about trying to please somebody else. And I think with men in general, we kind of fall into 2 buckets. Either we come to be very dominating and kind of don't want to use that term because it's thrown about quite a bit, too masculine in regards to we're not really being partners, we're more being forceful to our partner. And the second one is where we are more in a vulnerable state, where we are trying to please the partner to an extent that actually is detrimental to yourself and the partnership that you are in. where I think men generally fall into those two buckets. And obviously they want to be sexual, obviously manage to kind of manage both, because you need to be have that masculine part of yourself to be in a relationship, but at the same time you need to be respectful to the partner you're with, and be engaging and being able to communicate. I think it comes down to most of the problems we have in any relationship, is the communication side of things, and to be able to be open enough and strong enough about talking both what you need, and as well about your vulnerabilities.
Because you do talk about sometimes men find it quite difficult to have unwanted conversations that can actually help to understand where the relationship is going wrong. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think a lot of the times with men is that when we kind of we are actually generally very good at the courtship or the dating element of getting somebody to want to come into a relationship. When then men generally fail where they're kind of actually, compared to in the old days, we would go out, kill the beast, bring out the food, and then women will kind of take over. And it's kind of sometimes in kind of the same analogy where we go out, date a person, captivate, get their attention, and they want to start a relationship with us. And then men sometimes forget that even after you're in that relationship, you still need to cultivate the relationship. You still need to put effort in and still take people on a date, still plan for your kind of a relationship. And as well, having opinion in the relationship is very, very important. Where I think a lot of men will take the kind of the easy way out when, like, for instance, if you're asking somebody, your partner, where should we go out for dinner tonight? And the men will say, whatever you want to go. Thinking
Yes.
they're pleasing their partner or in regards to that's what they want. No, somebody like a partner wants somebody that has opinion. Okay, they may not go to that opinion, but at least you have some kind of opinion on how things are going to progress. And I think that's kind of where men fail a lot of times, is that they just fall into that easy option of saying, whatever you want, dear. And that's not really a sustainable long-term relationship.
No, because the woman will interpret it like, you're not bothered. You don't really care about, making things exciting. It can be interpreted quite a few ways, actually, by women.
Exactly.
So that's interesting. Yeah, go on.
Exactly, because then it's just not just women, but anybody in any relationship. If you don't show interest or at least opinion on what to do, people will think that you're not interested and you don't want to be there, and that's kind of as I say, it's not a foundation for a good partnership.
What do you think can help with that? What do you think that can help? How do men jump that hurdle? Because as you said, I feel dating has changed. I think, the old, the chivalry, the old-fashioned gestures, I personally think men don't know how to actually make it work in this time of dating, particularly in the over 40s, because back in the time, things were very different. It was old-fashioned courtship back then, and things have moved on. And sometimes things haven't. And maybe that conversation needs to be had, and maybe we should open that for both men and women. What do you think about that?
I think at the moment, men are very confused. I think the Me Too movement, it's like was definitely needed, very good, but it put a little bit of uncertainty on the men's side of things, and that, as well, the women liberation or not liberation, but the women getting them more on equal footing has put men in a way of sometimes they don't really know how to act. Like like when you go on a date, should I pay or should it be like split, or should I let the woman pay? And there's always an argument. Some women think, how dare he pay for me? I'm an independent woman and I want to pay for myself. And then there's another woman who says, I want to be treated. And I think in a certain way, I think both parties need to kind of sometimes get off their own horse and decide, let the man to start with be the chivalry and the gentleman and treat you. And then at the later date, then you can kind of mix it up. And And I think as well, I think men are being demasculated in a lot of this, especially as you mentioned. I think it's more problems in the 35 and over, both on men and women's side, because women as well are getting very capable of what they do. They're getting very powerful, very, very independent. But at the same time, you need to be vulnerable, as in allowing people to actually court you, if that's the right terminology, in a certain way. So and be okay with it. And then the men as well, like open the door for the women, walk on the outside of the closer to the street, like those simple things. Yeah, just remember that does go a long way. But kind of just be present and have your opinion on things. I think it's the most important thing.
So what I'm hearing, what you're saying to me is that it's, create a situation where you both can be yourself. If the gentleman is exactly how you describe, which I find most men to be anyway, and be themselves. At the end of the day, if they're not for you, then you need to walk away. If you don't like that kind of style of courting, then perhaps that's not what you need to be getting into 2 or 3 or 4 months down the road, and committing yourself to something that in the beginning is not what you actually wanted. And to communicate openly, isn't it, about what you want from each other. I want to go into more about, yes, we date, we court, but then it gets to the relation, and you did touch on it a little bit, and there's nothing worse. And because you're communicating the male side, okay, there's nothing worse than kind of connecting with a man who isn't ready.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think that's where I think my first relationship kind of failed for me. Was I wasn't ready. I didn't really understand how to behave or be present in the relationship. And I think when it comes to that, I think a lot of the times as well, I don't want to talk about like everybody has their own kind of checklist they want to go through, but you need to make sure the checklist is realistic. And as well, when you look at it, you need to have the strength as well, say, this is not working out for me, this is not what I want, and then let it go and move on. Because I think a lot of the times I've seen with more people around me, that they are, and I find that sometimes people are willing to settle on, but then later on, maybe 1 or 2 years down the line, it was kind of known that this would never work because this was such a big thing for you, but they didn't kind of have the courage to just say, this is not working out for us, let's just part as friends and move on.
And why do you think men tend to do that?
I think it's partly from fear and self-doubt, I think a lot of the time. Okay. And the other thing as well, I see a lot of men, and I remember doing this myself, that and I think it's just general, I don't think it's just men, but we trying to engineer a situation that we get the other partner to end the relationship in a way. And I think that now one thing I really do not like of what is happening in the dating world is that people are hiding behind texts and breaking off people over text. And just be respectful. And I think with any, and it kind of applies to any relationship, just be respectful to the person and listen to people. And I think that is like kind of one of the main things I see as a problem a lot of the times, is people don't let the other person express themselves fairly, and then a lot of miscommunication goes in, or argument starts.
I totally agree. I believe maturity has a lot to play in it as well. But also and maturity doesn't actually come with age, actually, as I've come to understand. But I do sometimes feel that experiences brings along maturity. You evolve, and I find sometimes when men and women have gone through relationships, it's unfortunate they aren't able to make the ex relationship work. but sometimes it's a way of bringing the kind of the evolved you into a new relationship, and perhaps that can bring about some honesty and authentic way of making that relationship committed, and to for it to nourish in that way. What do you say about that, about maturity, going through relationships where you've kind of learned a lot, and perhaps that is some of the ways that people actually then can go ahead and build a lasting relationship by lived experiences?
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, we never, the best learning curve for anybody is to learn through experiences. You can read something in a book, and like that's why the self-help book industry is so big, because everybody want to read about it, but nobody really putting it into practice. Because I think with a lot of these things come, yes, and I'm hoping you don't have to go through a lot of failed relationships to learn how to be a good partner. But
Absolutely.
I think a lot of it, when I look at my kind of relationship path that brought me here, is that part of it for me was I was scared of expressing myself. And I think that was part of my insecurity. And it was a part of my insecurity. But the more expression you can be in your relationship and tell somebody, this is not what I like and this is what I like, and that's then you can learn, and then you can talk about it. And I think then the other key to it is when you are expressing yourself on your most vulnerable desires, it's very important the person that listening to you is listening to you and is showing you the respect that I'm actually opening up to you here, and don't make fun of me or belittle me or do something that makes me not want to open up again. That makes
yeah.
it's like it's safe space and such.
Yes, because that can fear, is I think is one of the biggest reasons why people don't want to commit. I mean, the failing of, you talk about relationships. Some men may feel, and women, that they could have done better in their other relationship. That the fear of losing what they have lost in previous relationship, whether it's finances, whereas their emotional stability, they're at exactly where they want to be, but afraid that going into another relationship will open the door for more vulnerability and don't want to be vulnerable again. There can be many reasons, but I do feel that fear is a very strong emotion attached to commitment. What would you say to men who really are finding that one of the reasons why?
I think it's two. So one is to have somebody around you that you can actually talk to. It doesn't always have to be a partner or somebody that's a good friend, because it's always good to have somebody, a sounding board, at least have somebody you can talk to. Or that's why I kind of wanted to create this, went into this coaching thing, is more to create environment for men that could to come together and have an honest conversation about what they think and what they feel in their relationships. And then the other thing as well is to be honest in your relationship.
Okay.
I think is key to anything, because fear and rejection is the hardest thing to receive. And then I always talk to men, like everybody talks about, like you can walk up to this lady and chat her up, and like 90% of the time, or maybe let's say no 90, let's say 70% of the time, men will chicken out and not do it. And the guys that you generally do that, they kind of tend to kind of progress with it. But it's a kind of a believing that you are in kind of just don't have the fear kind of control your actions, but be strong enough about it that have a person around you that you can actually have that open and honest conversation, and don't deal with the rejection in a way that it actually has something to do with you. A lot of the time, this could be the wrong timing, or person is in a bad mood or something like that. And so you have to take all those things into consideration, and don't always talk about like that internal. Like everybody said, you can be your best friend. Like if you had ever a friend and he would be going on a stage and he would be so scared, you would never say to your friend, like, this will never work. You will never be able to go on stage. You would always be very, very supportive. I think sometimes you just need to be that you're own supportive self.
No, for me, that's really a positive step for men to take, and for women who are listening to actually hear that men do struggle just as we do. It's just that we are more vocal about it. We would talk to our friends. We talk to anyone who will listen. I'll be honest with you. And I think men don't get that luxury, do they, of just letting it out? And if they do, perhaps they, and as you mentioned before, fear of being judged. And also the other thing. Sorry, do you wanted to say something, Stefan?
No, I'm just listening. I
Yeah.
agree with you. Absolutely.
And what do you say to men who feel scared? I mean, suppose they've got someone like you to go to, isn't it? That they can talk it through without judgment.
For me, for the biggest thing for me is to make sure you are your best version of yourself. You are a whole person. Because I think a lot of the time is that everybody has their insecurities or vulnerabilities. Is the biggest thing we can do is just work on those, as in we just have to make them part of your life, be comfortable with it, and as well find somebody that you can have that honest conversation. And I think it's a lot of the time as well, it's not really be brave enough to have the conversation. I think a lot of the time men stop themselves from being honest because they are afraid of whoever they're talking to will judge them. And like you said, women will go and talk to anybody about their issues, and that's a very good thing. And I think a lot of men needs to do more of that. Be just confident enough to open up and say, I'm struggling. And I think there's nothing wrong with that, because a lot of men, much more than people talk about, are struggling, and they're just bottled up, and then either they kind of really break down or something worse happens.
Yeah, and that's why support is so important. Particularly, change will come. It's particularly if you've been in a relationship where you have children, and now you're going into another stage in your life where how do you balance fatherhood as well as connecting with a new relationship, and that relationship may have children too, that person may have children as well. How do you, I suppose, send a message to men who may find it hard to balance that? Because I think that's one of the things because if I just be a little more clearer, maybe that would help. If a man's going into a new relationship, the chances are that the partner, maybe a woman, is going to have the children most of the time. So therefore, it could be, once the relationship becomes established, that he will be spending more time with her children than with his own children. And perhaps that in itself causes conflict, the fact that he will be spending more time with her children than with his children, or the times that he's on dates that he could be spending more time with his children. And women also feel that as well. I'm not saying any differently, but here I'm trying to get it from the male perspective. Have you found that with men?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always the challenge, I think, how you balance that kind of sharing yourself and sharing your affection across multiple families is always a challenge. And then it's as well knowing what kind of relationship you need to have in those, because I think that's very important as well. A lot of times, especially when you come into a step environment, is that you're not going to necessarily to step in there to be a father to the children in there. You're not more going to stepping in there to be support for that partner that you're with, and you kind of help out any way you can and become more of a honorary like a dad or something. But because there's generally, I'm not saying not all the cases, there is going to be another father there, and then they will always be obviously the main kind of figurehead in that regards. But it's kind of a knowing though, and as well knowing it as well, that partner that you have, their priorities will always be the kids first, whatever happens, and you need to be comfortable with that, knowing that whatever happens and then something happens to the kids are always going to be your first priority in regards, and same for him. If he has kids, his kids will always be the first priority, and the partner needs to understand that. It's about talking honestly about it. And the other thing as well, don't come in and be that forced in there. Just slowly take it in and friend them slowly, and don't without coming in and to be that massive disciplinarian or something like that. And then because it's not really your role in the start of a relationship, it may be further down the line, but at the beginning it's more you that as a server and supporter.
Good advice. I can keep going on and on and on. There's so much to cover. Tell my audience, coming to you, what can they expect? What do you offer to those who you work with?
So what I offer is a framework in regards to helping yourself understand yourself and how kind of your fundamental behaviors work best in the relationships, and trying to figure out what makes you tick, what is your needs and your values. I think it's very important to understand when you go into a relationship, what kind of relationship you want to actually get out of, and then just working through that and kind of helping you to be a whole person really, and be a kind of somebody that somebody would like to have in their relationship.
And how would you describe a high value man?
Somebody that is respectful, has awareness about himself and his goals. Somebody that is present and communicative, as in somebody that is not afraid of at least kind of let people know why he's there and what he wants to get out of it. And I think respect is one of the main things, though.
Right. And where can they find you? Share your details, Stefan.
Yeah, so I can be found on my website. It's just highvalueman.is, Facebook and Instagram under the High Value Man.
Wonderful. And I know you've got on your website, you've got blogging, you've got services, you've got bookstore. There's so much you can check in and find out more about high value man, how to become a high value man if you are already. Well, there's no harm in checking in and see what areas you can work on, perhaps, with Stefan. Thank you so much for coming on board the Crazy Over 45 podcast.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Stefan, for coming on, explaining it all, what it takes to be a high-value man. Well, we've reached the end of our episode. Not just now, we have one more to go. Diana Idris is the owner and creator and CEO of Better Topics Card Game. She's here to tell us how card games can help improve relationships. After all, love is all about fun and games. Right, if you want to get hold of all my guests, you can. Instagram, Facebook, Gmail. And don't forget to leave a question if you want an answer to some of the love marathon experiences that we've shared so far. Please do so. I'm your host, Caroline Brown.